I think I loved myself, but then one day I looked into my relationships. At that time, there was a specific relationship with a narcissist who was abusive, who was not treating me in the way that I knew I deserved to be treated. And yet, I could not separate myself from him. I could not stop myself from continuing to be engaged in that relationship. And I started asking myself, what is really going on here? Why am I doing this? It was during this time that I decided to go back to school, and I committed to taking a master's degree in spiritual psychology. Now, it's a fabulous, fabulous program that I really love and that has created enormous transformations for me and for a lot of people that I've worked with. The emphasis was on releasing judgments and being loving and learning how to forgive and to forgive even those who hurt you. The thing is that I didn't quite understand all that. I was applying those skills in that relationship, but the relationship was toxic. And it is later on that I realized that this is not about unconditional loving and letting others step all over me and having my needs not fulfilled and continue being loving with a person who doesn't care about me. What I didn't understand at that time was the importance of taking care of myself, of standing up for myself, of setting boundaries and saying no to the abuse, to the neglect, to the narcissistic black hole that was eating my soul away. And one day it dawned on me, and I realized that loving somebody unconditionally and forgiving fully and letting go of judgments and all of these things were only possible if I applied that to myself as well. I realized that it was unequal. I was basically sacrificing myself, my own needs, my own happiness. I was afraid to set boundaries, to say no. And later on, I realized these were some of the symptoms that I didn't love myself. I did not take care of myself. I was not as compassionate to myself as I was compassionate to him. I always found excuses for his behavior and never gave myself the love that I needed. I didn't understand that, and this is why I stayed in that relationship much longer than I probably would have loved to. But I realize now that this was part of my growing. This was part of my process. I was learning certain things and I was applying them, but the missing piece was me loving me. Me being kind to myself. I didn't realize then that not saying no to what I didn't want in my life and continuing to be there for him when he was not there for me, I didn't realize that by doing this, I was actually abandoning myself. And abandoning ourselves is one of the biggest ways in which we can recognize that we don't love ourselves, that we're not loving towards ourselves. Let me put it that way. Once I had those insights, I focused my attention on loving myself instead of being loving towards somebody who wasn't loving towards me. And this is what created the shift. I was able to say no. I was able to set boundaries. I was able to not receive him back. I was able to really, really focus on my own happiness and surround myself with people who were kind and loving and who liked me and who appreciated me for who I am. So that was the beginning of my relationship with self-love. Since then, I've expanded my knowledge, and the last few years I've been living with the intention of embodying self-love. And let me tell you something, self-love is not selfishness. I know that a lot of people think that when we talk about loving yourself, that it means you're selfish or you're full of yourself. But this is not what I mean. What I mean is loving the self in the sense in which Carl Jung is talking about that. The self as an archetype. The self with a capital S. The self who represents your essence, your spirit, your soul, your highest self? Can you love your highest self, your wise self, your most compassionate, loving, beautiful, divine self? This is not about loving your personality. Our personality can be twisted by conditioning, by trauma, by efforts to survive, by strategies to remain on top of things and to remain alive. I'm talking about that self that is eternal, that self that is divine, that self that illuminates a room when you enter it, that self that cannot be destroyed, that self that is love itself. Thank you for being with me today and for allowing me to express and to share. My name is Gina Brezini, your guide to loving yourself fully.